Tonight, Shirley Lunishmat Avi Morito, Ber Meir Ben Ruven Halevi, Imi Marati, Rachel Bat Harav Michael. And this week we have the privilege of reading Parshat Beshalach, Shabbat Shira. But we're not going to talk about the Shira. We're going to talk about something else in Parshat Beshalach. And I really, one of the things that's very interesting in the Parsha of Beshalach is we have two very interesting incidents that, wait a minute. We have two very interesting incidents that deal with water, which is very appropriate for tonight, given our weather outside and the fact that we've been davening for water, rain. So I felt it was a little appropriate tonight that we're going to talk about rain and water. Oh, not much rain, more water. And we're going to look at these two parashah. We're going to focus primarily on the second one because we focused on the first one previously in previous years. So here goes. Immediately after Bnei Yisrael cross Yam Suf, they see this wonderful miracle. Hashem destroys the whole Egyptian army. They all drown in the sea. And it tells us, Vayasa Moshe Yisrael Yam Suf, we are in Perek Tet Zion. This is still the middle of the fourth Aliyah. Right after we read about this Shirat Hayam, chapter 16, verse 22. Moshe causes Bnei Yisrael to travel from Yam Suf and Vayetzu al Midbar Shur. They go to the wilderness of Shur. Vayelchu Shloshet Yamim Bamidbar. They travel for 3 days in the desert below Matsumayim, and they do not find water. Vayavo Marata. Then they arrive in Marah or Marata. There's some people who say the place name was Marata or Marat, but whatever, Marah. They were not able to drink the water from Marah, because something was bitter. Either they were bitter or the waters were bitter. Al-Kain Karash Marah. That's why they called it in a place Marah. Now then it says, al Moshe. So the people cried out to Moshe, saying, "What should we drink?" Vayitzakel Hashem. Moshe cries out or davens to Hashem. Vayoreu Hashem eitz. Hashem teaches him about a certain type of wood or tree or whatever. Vayashlech alamayim. He threw that tree into the water. Vayimtku amayim. The water became sweet. Sham samlo chok mishpat. There Hashem gave them chok and mishpat. Visham niso. And there they tested. Somebody was tested. Vayomer, and Hashem says, Im shamot tishma lekol Hashem lokecha. Or Moshe says to Am Yisrael, Im shamot tishma lekol Hashem lokecha. If you will listen to the voice of Hashem, and do what is righteous in his eyes. You will take heed of his mitzvot, and observe all of his chukim. All of the afflictions that I placed upon the Egyptians, I will not place upon you. Hashem who heals you. So I want to focus just on a couple of things before we move to the next story. First and foremost, they go 3 days without water, and they don't complain. Remember, this is Am Yisrael. We always imagine as they're complaining about everything. They went 3 days in the water, and they didn't find water, and they didn't complain. Then eventually they get to this place where they thought they were going to have water. They couldn't use the water; it was not potable. So then they said, "Hey Moshe, what's going on here? We need something to drink. We've been going 3 days. We didn't complain because I guess presumably they had a 3-day supply of water, I guess, that they had collected before they left Yam Suf. Don't know. But they complain only after they've traveled 3 days, a 3-day journey in 3 days and that. So that's one of the things. Also, it says, by Yilonu, they complain to Moshe, and it says, Vayitzakel Hashem Hashem. Moshe immediately, upon hearing their complaint, cries out to Hashem, and Hashem gives them the answer. Here's what you got to do, and everything is fine. Now we get to story number 2, a little bit later in the journey. In between, we've had the story of the man, and now it tells us they're going to get to Midbar Sin. They travel according to Hashem, as Hashem has told them to travel. And they camp at Refidim. And guess what? There's no water. They're camping at a place where there's no water. Whether it was a wadi and the wadi was dry, whether it was an oasis and the springs dried up, don't know. All we know is that Refidim, there was no water for the people to drink. Now, interestingly enough, it does not say Vayilonu ha'amal Moshe. It says Vayorav ha'amim Moshe. They started quarreling with Moshe. Vayomru, and they said, Tinu lanu mayim minishta. Give us water to drink. As opposed to, before, what did they say? They said, Manishta, what are we going to drink? A little bit different here. Firstly, there it says Vayilonu. Here it says Vayorev. Okay? So Moshe says, Matri Vuni Modi. What are you quarreling with me? I got water up my sleeve, magic. I'm going to bring you some water. Matinasuna Hashem. Why are you testing Hashem? If Hashem was ready to bring you water, you'll get water. Don't worry when you run out of water. However, suddenly they became very thirsty for water. Now they complained to Moshe. What did they say? Why did you take us out of Egypt? To kill me, my children, and my cattle with thirst, like drawing us no water. Then Moshe calls out to Hashem and says the following. What am I going to do with these people? Only a little bit more provocation, and they'll stone me to death. Hashem tells Moshe, pass before the people, and take some of the elders of Yisrael with you, and the staff that you use to smite the river, take within your hand and go for a little walk with it. Take your walking stick and go for a walk. I will stand before you, Sham, there, al hatzur, by some rock, bechorev, at Har Sinai. The kita batzur, and you will strike the rock. The yatzu mimenu mayim, and water will come forth from it. V'shatam, and the people will have to drink. Vayaskein Moshe did exactly as he was told. Leinei ziknei Yisrael, in front of the eyes of the elders of Israel. They named this place Masa, challenge, Umariva, and strife. Al-Riv b'nei Yisrael. Interestingly enough, it's Masa first and Mariva second, but then it gives the reasons in the opposite order. Al-Riv b'nei Yisrael, they started quarreling. B'nei Yisrael was quarreling. V'al nasotamet Hashem limor, and them testing Hashem, saying, Hayesh, Hashem b'kirbeinu imayin. Is Hashem in our midst or not? Now again, salient points here. First, they complain, and Moshe does nothing. Right? He just says, what do you want from me? Go to Hashem. Then it says they ran out of water, they were thirsty, then they come back and complain again. Why'd you take us out of Egypt? Moshe finally calls out to Hashem, and Hashem tells him what to do. And he does it, and they have water. So again, it seems that in both of these cases, there's almost like a give and take between Moshe and the people before Moshe, here at least, there's a give and take. Rather than immediately going to Hashem and saying, hey, Hashem, people need water, he says, you go to Hashem. He says to them, why are you testing Hashem? Why don't you go to Hashem? And it appears that they didn't, so eventually they come back to Moshe, and Moshe has to go to Hashem. So these two, by the way, just FYI, these both happened before Matan Torah. One, right after the Exodus, right after they've left Egypt and crossed the Yam Suf. Now we get to two different stories in Sefer Bamidbar, similar but slightly different. We're going to look at those a little bit. In Bamidbar, parshat Chukat, we are told the following. Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol hoida midbar tzin b'chodesh harishon. All of b'nei Yisrael arrived in Midbar Tzin. It was the first month. Now this is year number 40. 40 years have passed since we left Egypt now. We're in the 40th year. This is in Bamidbar and Parshat Chukat. Vayeshev ha'am b'kadesh, the people stopped at Kadesh. Vatamot sham Miriam died there, but he covered sham, and she was buried there. And what happens immediately after Miriam, the reason tells us about Miriam died in Midbar, below hayamayim loida. There was no water for the congregation. Vayikalu, and they congregated al Moshe v'al Aaron, up against Moshe and Aaron. And again, we have a very similar term to what we had in the second story of this week. Vayorav ha'ami Moshe. Again, they quarrel with Moshe. Vayamru le'mor, and they said, "V'lugavanu b'gvachenu lifnei Hashem." Halavai, we had died the same way our brothers died before Hashem. The lama havetim et kal Hashem. Why have you brought the congregation of Hashem al-Midbar Azet to this desert? Lamut shaman after mirvenu, so that we and our cattle all die. And then they go further. Why did you even bother taking us out of Egypt in the first place? Now remember, this is not the generation that left Egypt. This is their kids. This is the next generation. 40 years have passed, but they're still saying, why'd you take us out of Egypt in the first place? Lavio brought us to bring us into this terrible place. Loma comes there. It's not a place where we can plant. Taina Geffen and Rimon. We don't find any vegetation here. There's no figs. There's no vines. There's no pomegranate that you promised us. You're going to bring us into this land with all this flowing in milk and honey. Where is it? There's not even water to drink. So what happens? Aaron and Moshe go before the congregation. They'll petach to the entrance of the Mishkan. And they fall on their faces. Presumably, when you fall on your face, what does that mean? You're davening. Presumably, and they appear, and Hashem's presence appears. And Hashem tells Moshe what to do. Take the staff. Similar to what he told them at the end of the second incident in this week's parsha. Gather everybody together, you and Aaron. There, you're supposed to speak to this rock, and it will give forth water. You'll bring forth water from this cellar, and you'll give to drink the congregation and all of their cattle, because they complained that all their cattle was thirsty too. And then we know Moshe does it, and ultimately something happens, and Hashem ultimately tells him, "Sorry, you missed the boat here. Something went wrong." And this is called Hema Meimeriva Asherov Bnei Yisrael at Hashem, where Bnei Yisrael strove with Hashem, Kodesh Bam, and they were sanctified through them. Now another story, also at the end of Parshat Chukat, also deals with water, but it's also a slightly different twist to our water story. They traveled from Har right after, this is immediately after Aharon dies. They traveled Derech Yamsuf, Lisbov, and Eretz Edom, because they asked for permission to travel through Edom. Edom said no way, so they now had to go and circle around the land of Edom to get back on their track to Eretz Yisrael. But Tiksar Nefesh Am Badorach, the people got lost patience, I guess. Tiksar means that their souls became short on the way. Whatever that means. They ran out of patience with Moshe already. And the people spoke Belokim against God and with Moshe. Now again, what did they ask? Remember, this is the 40 years later. Still, what are they asking? Why'd you take us out of Egypt? To die in the desert. There's no bread. There's no water. Our souls are disgusted. The lechem haklokel, this spiritual bread that you've given us to eat. This man is what they're complaining about. There it says, so Hashem sends fiery snakes. And they bit from the people, and many of the Jews, many people died. The people come to Moshe and say, we sinned, because we complained. Pray to Hashem, and he should get rid of the Hashim, these snakes. By Palel Moshe, Hashem tells them what to do, and no resolution to the water and bread story. The snakes disappear, they're solved. We don't find out what happened about people's complaint. However, then tells us they travel from one place to two places to three places, and finally, ultimately, they reach a place, that'll be Gvul Moav. They finally get to a place called Be'er. Which Moshe tells Moshe, gather the people together, and I'll give them water. Finally, after they've been through 6 or 7 travels since they had this complaint, Hashem finally says, we'll give them water, and then we have this so-called Shirat HaBe'er. Okay? So I wanted to try to focus a little bit on each of these stories, but really primarily on the ones in this week in our parsha. And we're going to start with, as I said, with the second one, which is really the one I want to focus on tonight. So we'll start with, of course, as usual, with Rashi. So the first, let's go back again and just quickly read what happened in this week's second water story. Basically, we arrive in Midbar Sin, and there's no water to drink. There's no water there. So the people complain to Moshe, and they say, give us water to drink. And Moshe says, what do you want from me? Why are you testing Hashem? Now, the first question is, did they have water or did they not have water? That's the first question. Now, in the other case, when they got to Mara, it appears they were already out of water because they've been going for 3 days without water. So how much water supply does a person carry with him? Here it appears, at least the parshanim want to say that they still have, it just is ein mayim l'shtodam, there's no water on site, but they still had the water that they were carrying. At least that seems to be the case. And that's why they complain. Moshe says, what do you want from me? And they don't continue the complaint, but then it says later on in Pasuk Gimel, then suddenly they start getting very, very thirsty, and then they complain. And then Moshe calls out to Hashem, and that's what happens. So if we go back now to Rashi, Rashi says, Matanasun. So the question is, why does Moshe assume they're trying to test Hashem? That's what Rashi wants to understand. Why does Moshe use this lashon Matanasun? Why are you testing Hashem? Lomer is if to say, Moshe wants to say to the Ben Yisrael, you're questioning whether Hashem has the ability to give water. You've already seen that he can do whatever he wants. So why are you testing Hashem when you run out of water and you need water? Hashem will give you water. So again, Rashi seems to also imply that they still had water left. Okay, now Moshe's complaint to Hashem is, you got to give them water now because Od Ma'at, soon when they run out of water, when they totally run out of water, Im Amtin Od Ma'at, they're going to get rid of me. They're going to get sick of me and get rid of me. Now remember, this is before the Chet HaEgel. So he's already saying that, hey, these people don't have any patience. They just don't have patience. If they run out, you keep them waiting without giving water, they're going to get rid of me. If that's what you want, fine, but I don't think that's what you want, Moshe is saying to Hashem. Okay. And Hashem's answer is very interesting. He says, pass in front of the people. Why is Hashem telling Moshe that? Rashi says, you really think they're going to really stone you? You really mean that literally? You think they're going to stone you? If you think they're going to stone you, walk right in front of them. Go past that angry mob and see if they'll really start throwing stones at you. Hashem is asking Moshe, why are you speaking Lashon Hara Yisrael that they are going to stone you? What are you doing to me, my people? They're not going to stone you. I'll prove it to you. Go, you pass in front of them. Okay, however, why does he have to take the elders with him? Okay, maybe they won't stone him because they don't want to stone the elders too. So why is Hashem telling him to take the elders? Le'edut, they are going to be the witnesses. Why? They're going to be the ones who will testify that what you did was actually a miracle. It wasn't that you knew where the water was. It wasn't that there was a hidden spring under this rock. So the people won't say, you need to have witnesses who will say that, no, it's not like he just hit the rock and the rock moved aside and there was a spring hidden under it. No, that's not the case. You need witnesses to prove it because the people won't believe you. Because remember, interestingly enough, we're going to see later on that Moshe is going to a place where the people aren't. He's going only with the elders. Okay? And he has to take this mata that he kita boat hayar. Why does he have to take this mata that he struck the river with? Why does Hashem specifically emphasize that this was the staff that he used to strike the Nile River with? Yisrael Omrim. Bnei Yisrael said, Alamateh, concerning this mateh, this staff always brings trouble. No matter what it does, it causes punishments, causes problems. It brings fire, it brings frogs, it brings blood, it brings all these wonderful, deadly things. Doesn't do any good. We see all the plagues through Egypt, whether it was Egypt or on the Yam, came about through that staff. That's a pretty powerful staff. Don't turn it against us. Why are you taking that with you now? The Egyptians are gone. Let's leave it for when we're in a war here, is what they're thinking. That's why Hashem says, that Am Yisrael should see now that not only can the staff do miracles that seem to be punishment, and also do miracles that are saving people. Obviously, it saved Am Yisrael, but they didn't look at it that way. In other words, it's not only used for punishment; it could also be used for benefit. So that's why Moshe has to take the staff. Okay, Vikita Batsur. Okay, that you have to hit the rock. Al Hatsur lo nemar. Don't hit on top of the rock and just tap it. Ela Bitsur. You got to give the rock a good zetz. Hashem tells him. Mikan shemata hayashal min davar chazak. Ushmo Sanpirinon. And this stick was not fluffy stuff. It was a heavy staff, and he was going to boom. And when Moshe hits this rock, the rock splits in half, and water comes forth. That's what Rashi wants to say happens. Okay, so we got a couple of things going on here. First and foremost, the people have to learn that the staff is not only for punishment; it also can provide good, and also Moshe has to understand that this has to be clearly impress upon the people that it's a miracle. That's why he has to bring the elders. The elders are the ones who are going to watch what he does, so that you say, "Oh, Moshe just happened to be, he knew where there was a spring somewhere in the desert." No, he didn't. This was a miracle, or an extraordinary miracle rather than an ordinary natural miracle. Let's put it that way. Okay, so Ramban. Okay, I'm going to skip the first part here. Okay. There's no water. When they arrived at this place called Refidim, there were no springs. It's not an oasis. They wanted to know, why did they stop there? What are we stopping here for? They immediately said to Moshe, "Why are you stopping here? What are you doing here? This is not a place. There's water. There's no water here." That time why it says Vayarev ha'am Moshe, that they quarreled with Moshe. They said, "We don't want to stop here." Now we know that Bnei Yisrael were traveling based on whose word? Shem's word. The cloud stops, they stop. The cloud keeps going, they keep going. So they're complaining to Moshe, "Why'd you stop here? Not a good rest stop. Let's go on to the next rest stop." That time Vayarev ha'am Moshe, he had to note b'mekomot shenemar b'hem vayilonu hitaromet. When they complain, it's that they're missing something. That is, we're told to use the word vayilonu. They were complaining about something. What are we going to do about the situation? There is a situation that needs to be resolved, and we need to know what to do. Manaseh, manochal, manishteh. Avo vayarev, the word in our pasuk, vayarev ha'ami Moshe, that they quarreled. She'asui mo meriva mamish. They started arguing with him. They said, "What do you mean? Why are we stopping here?" And they said, "Well, if you want us to stop here, you and Aaron, who are our leaders, got to provide us water. If you want us to stop here. You're responsible here for this people. You're the leaders. You're in charge. You're telling us to stop here, and you didn't bring us any needs that we have. How are we going to survive here?" Moshe's answer to them is, "Why are you arguing with me, and why are you testing Hashem? This quarreling that Am Yisrael has with Moshe, is, as Rashi said, is they're testing Hashem to see, is he able to give them water in this place? If there's a place and there's no water, how's he going to provide us water? Moshe's answer to them is, "What do you want from me? Go daven to Hashem and see if he'll provide you water. You had a need. If you as an individual have a need, you don't go to some people do. This Ramban is very clearly, you don't go to the Rebbe to pray for you. You got to daven for yourself if you need something. Yeah, you can ask the Rebbe to help you after you prayed for yourself, but you can't say, "Rebbe, you pray for me. I got other things to do." That's why they were trying to test Hashem. That's why the parsha ends with, they tested Hashem, saying, "Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayim." Is Hashem really here? In other words, if Hashem is really here, he knows what we need. Why isn't he providing it? So it must be Hashem's not here, kiviyachol, is what they were saying. In other words, they were coming to Moshe saying, "Hey, there's no water here. We need water. Hashem knows we need water. Hashem brought us here. Why did he bring us here if there's no water here?" So something's wrong. The Azraf Tarucha me Allah. So therefore their spirit was weak. The Amdu Yomo Yomayim Mistapkim b'mayim shebechlem. However, they weren't upset. They weren't feeling the need enough. They were feeling the need enough to complain to Moshe, but they weren't feeling the need enough that they should go daven to Hashem. So what do? They survived for the next day or two with the water that they had brought with them. And then the next pasuk tells us, they ran out of water. Now they ran out of the water supply that they brought. Then what do? Now they complain to Moshe, but not complaining, testing Hashem, but complaining to Moshe that's saying, hey, now we need a solution. Now we really do need a solution. Before we got here, you could have said we had water to get by for a day or two, but now we don't. It's a day or two has gone by. Our water supply is gone. Now we need some real water. What are we going to do? Okay. Just like every other place where they need something and they ask Moshe to tell Hashem to provide it, whether it's food, water, they're in a war, whatever it is. And then they start to say, why did you take us out of Egypt to bring us to a place where we can't meet, you can't provide for our basic needs? When Moshe realizes now they are out of water, now they really are thirsty, and he's Hashem, he davens to Hashem, and when he's talking to Hashem, he tells him, he tells him they also quarreled at the beginning. So not that Hashem didn't know, but Moshe now lays it all in front of Hashem. He says, hey, they've been arguing ever since we got here. Now they've run out of water. That's even worse. However, of Avram, Ibn Ezra says, there were two groups of Jews. One group was arguing with Moshe, why are we stopping here when there's no water? One was quarreling with Hashem. But it seems to me that it's too delayed. It was two different times. It's the same group of people. Okay. Now here they add that not only you're going to kill me, but you're going to kill my children and my cattle. When they're quarreling with Moshe, when they're arguing with Moshe, they mention Gama Mikneh. They also mention their cattle. Lomar lo, to remind him, they need a lot of water to survive. You're going to have to give something that's going to provide water for all of us, not just for the people, but for the animals too. Therefore, later on, interestingly enough, not here. Here, by the way, it says that there was water came forth in the rock. It doesn't say anybody drank from the water. We presume that, okay, there was water, they filled their things, they drank. But only later on, 40 years later, in the case in Memriva in Bamidbar, does it say that everybody and their cattle also drank. However, they compared themselves to their animals to themselves. The Amru, and they said, the physical part of a man is his life. Or actually the animals of a person provide his livelihood. One who's traveling, if he doesn't have his animals with him, he's going to be lost because he's going to have too much to carry, won't be able to survive, may lose the way, may get exhausted. The Tami's Kiramo Tiviat Banai, why do they mention their children? Why is it to kill all of us? As they say later on. Why does he mention the children? To say that everybody's suffering here. It's not just we're suffering, it's everybody. All the children in our families are suffering. Because young children especially, they can't survive as long as an older person can survive a little bit without water. A younger person can't. A child can't. And they'll die. We have to watch them die of thirst before we die of thirst because they're going to run out of water first. Okay, so when it says Moshe, Hashem tells Moshe to pass in front of the people. Ramban gives two different possibilities of what that means. Kilashon Heviro Toli Arim. Avor Lifnei Ha'am means I want you to go in one direction, to pass away, to move away from the people. As he says, he uses that word Hevir. We have, when Yosef was resettling the population of Egypt, that's what it says. Hevir Toli Arim. He moved people from one city to another. He resettled people. So Ramban says that when Hashem says to Moshe, Avor Lifnei Ha'am, one of the meanings for Avor could possibly be go in a different direction. They're here, I want you to go somewhere else. Or in another place, in Yirmiyah, where it says, I'm going to cause your enemies to be in a land that they didn't know. Which both of those other places mean to go from one place to another place. That's possible. Okimar, or it could mean pass in front of them, go ahead of them, lead them. In other words, you're behind them now, go in front of them and lead them. Hakushi, where two people are having a race and one of them passes the other one. Yaakov passes in front of all his family when he's going to meet Esav. Again, so there are two different possible meanings for Havir. That you should take the lead and lead the way. So one is to go somewhere else, the other is to lead the way. The Inyan HaKasav one, Ramban wants to say, by the way, that this is the first, not the second. Ki hayam ha'amayu b'Refidim. The people stayed in Refidim. But the rock that Moshe is going to, was not in Refidim. It was in Chorev. It's in Har Sinai. Al Dad HaRishonim, as we found. Oh, Makom Ir Hayal Lifnei Ar Karov Lo Al Dati. Or there was a local place. There's a place near Har Sinai that was called perhaps Chorev, and that's where this rock is. So it was a distance from Refidim to Chorev, a couple of parsot, and therefore Moshe had to go in front of them. And he was leaving the camp to go in front of them. That's why Hashem tells you go, take the elders, and you go. Leave everybody behind. People aren't all going with you. You should keep going until you see me. I'll be there waiting for you when you get to the point where this rock is. When you get to the rock, you'll know it's the rock because you'll see the presence of Hashem there. Okay, now it's interesting that, again, he says here, and Moshe hits the rock and water goes through. Below Sipra Katuv, and the pasuk doesn't say Vatesh Toido Biram, Kashir Bashniya, like it does in Mamidbar. It specifically does not say that everybody had to drink. Why not? Obviously, that was the whole reason he brought forth the water, was the people to have water to drink, right? The reason it doesn't mention that the people drank was because it's obvious that all of the people didn't go to Chorev to drink. They don't arrive in Sinai till after the war with Amalek, and then they're going to first travel to Sinai. But after Moshe brings them out this water, they send the kids and the animals to draw water, to bring like everybody who's traveling. You travel, you send somebody out, you send a group out, a delegation out to the nearest water supply and bring back some water. I guess back in those times, obviously much more normal that even if you were living in a city, you didn't have hot and running water and cold running water. You'd go out to the well, somebody would draw the water and bring it back home. Not everybody went to the well to drink. The Karavelai, and it appears to me, Shiyatu Mayim Atur Bechorev, Mayim Karim Nozlim, that the water that came out of the rock in Chorev was cold, running water. The Holchwell Refidim, and the water flowed all the way to Refidim. So when it created a wadi, a water stream from Chorev to Refidim, and that's where everybody had to drink. And that's why the Pasukim in Tilim say, he brought from the cell, he brought forth running water, and like a river or a wadi of river of water running. Again, there's other Pasukim in Tilim that similar refer to the same thing. Again, also these things. So Moshe hits the rock. There's a water flow that runs all the way from the rock to where the people are. Now Ramban gets into our second story, which is 40 years later in Kadesh. Vasela Hasheni, the second rock, Asher Kadesh, that was in Kadesh, Nivkabo Kimo Be'er Novea Mayim. It was like it created a flow of water like a well. The Alkain Amar Hua Be'er Asher Mar L'Shem Moshe. This was the well that Hashem told Moshe. V'yomer B'shirach Be'er Chafaru Asarim. This was a well that was dug by officers. Ki Haya Kimo Be'er Chafura. It was like a well, as opposed to here where it became a stream of water. There it was like a well of water. That's why it could say there, everybody drank from the well. They drank immediately there at that place where the water was. It didn't have to run downstream to where they were. Here the rock produced a flow of water that people could just bring into their house and drink. The Alpha-P. Now, even though, according to Chazal, Miriam, all this both the well that was a well in Bamidbar and was a river in Shemot, both of these come from the same water source of this Be'er of Miriam. Yitavnei Shayabapamar is shown since the first time at the beginning of the 40 years, the Chol Harba Shanim and all the 40 years, Moshe Chaim Kinharot Shotfot, each of them it would flow like water to everybody. In other words, the Be'er Miriam, at least according to the Midrash, would flow like a river or multiple rivers to wherever people needed the water for the whole 40 years. However, 40 years later, when Miriam dies and it stops, and then Moshe has to recreate it as a well, because of people were punished there, it became like a well, like a dug well, full of water, as opposed to all the 40 years where it was a bunch of streams. Okay. All right. Why does he mention that Moshe has to take the mata, the staff? But command Aaron. In other words, you commanded Aaron to use the staff. So the question is, which staff does he take? Aaron's staff? Does he take Moshe's staff? Great question. But he mentions the fact that this staff was used to strike the river. He does say the staff that was turned to a nachash, or the mata you use for all the other signs. To remind the people of this wondrous thing. In the case of the yaor, of the river, hafach hamayim ledam. There, hafuch, it turns water into blood, which changes the whole nature of the water. It turns to blood. But now he's going to bring water from a dry rock. So this staff can do miracles and in both directions. It can turn water into something else, and it can turn something else into water. So it has two different ways in which it operates. Again, to remind Bnei Yisrael that it's not the stick that has the miracles in it, it's Hashem that has the miracles in it. The stick is just the tool that is used. Okay, but Avur, why does Hashem have to be standing there to show him which rock? Why is Hashem say, I'll be standing there waiting for you? Since this is now going to be the beginning of a miracle that's going to happen now for the next 40 years, that this well is going to travel with them. That's why Hashem's presence has to be there when this well begins to operate. Just like it says in the beginning of the first day, the man fell for the first time. Because it's going to be such a miracle that people are going to start to give you a whole, possibly taking it for granted. Hashem's presence has to be manifest on the day that it starts, to remind the people that this is a miracle. This isn't something you should just say, it happens all the time. No, it doesn't. It only happens because Hashem wants it to happen. Okay. Okay. Chaim tells us first, goes all the way back to the beginning of the story. It tells the story all happened in a place called Refidim. It says, Vayachanu Refidim, they camped at Refidim v'ein mayim, and there was no water. That's what the pasuk tells us. The Divrei Zal, the Gemara wants to tell us, Ein Refidim. Refidim is not really the name of the place, but it is the name of the place, but it really is it's given that name because of something. Ela Rifyon Yadayim. Refidim is weakness of hands. Rafu Yadayim minat Rifyon Yadayim minat Torah. That their hands were weakened in Torah. It came out of cause of Lomar, Rafu Yadayim minat Torah, Shenim Shlomayim. Since they were lax in their using in their hands their handling of Torah. In other words, they were weak in their study of Torah. Hashem, now Torah is always compared to Mayim, so therefore Hashem held back water. Since they held back the Torah study, Hashem held back the water. Mida keneged mida, measure for measure. Okay, Vayarav ha'am. The people argued, quarreled with Moshe. Perush, what does that mean? What is this quarrel? She'amru lahem b'derech zu, because the quarrel wasn't that they asked for water. The quarrel was how they asked for water. B'derech zeh, here's how they asked it. Tenu lanu mayim, give us water. They didn't say, Moshe, can we please have some water? We're dying of thirst here. We need some water. No, they said, Tenu lanu mayim, give us water. Moshe yesh lamayim l'teit lahem. Does Moshe has water? He's going to be carrying a huge canteen with him enough to supply water for the whole people. This is somebody who's looking for a quarrel. Says, give me something. If their intent was to ask Yitzhak Hashem that Moshe should daven on behalf of people for water to Hashem, they should have asked, what are we going to drink? Or perhaps the problem wasn't that they give us water, that they wanted but the problem was they were complaining to Moshe that you got to give us water, you owe us water. Like somebody who owes a debt, you owe it to us. The Omer lo tein lo li masha tachayavli. Give me it because you owe it to me. The Amr Lashon Rabin, why did they, if that's the case, they're talking to Moshe, why didn't they say Ten Lanu, give us? Why Tenu Lanu, you give us, you plural give us? Why Amr Lashon Rabin, Midivremi Moshe Levad? If they're talking to Moshe alone, why are they using a plural Lashon to give us, you plural give us? Kan Kilalu Hashem. So they're also including Hashem, as though, Hashem, you owe us water, you got to give us water, you brought us here. Therefore, Amar Moshe, Moshe says, what do you want from me? You want to test Hashem to see if he can provide you water? The Amr B'Seder Zen, he says, first, this, keep it, Arach Hashem K'bar Yadu, he call Yachol, Elaminasim Im Yesh B'Kirbam. They already realized, they had recognized from Kriyat Yamsu, from the plagues, that Hashem could do whatever he wanted, if he wants to. So they're questioning, is Hashem really with us that he's going to do it for us? That's what they were really questioning. And that's why Moshe is saying, why are you testing Hashem? What do you think? You think Hashem's left the building? Hashem's left you on your own? Hashem's here with us. Have faith. That's what he's telling him. Matna Sunat Hashem. He's telling him, have faith. Hashem is still here. Okay. Right. Smash Tom. Then they run out of water. They become very thirsty. This whole story leads us to the following question. Why does Hashem put them in this place of this great test of dying through thirst? Any thinking person, the Aracham says, would calculate that, hey, something like this will lend people to deny God. If you don't have what you need, and God brought you here, you would say, wait a minute, why isn't God providing my needs? It must be God's not around. So that could lead one to deny the existence of God. So why do we have this test in the first place? The Tigdala Kushya al Moshe. An even greater question on Moshe. When people come and say, hey, we need water, why doesn't Moshe immediately daven to Hashem? He should give all this kochot and daven. Just like every day we're davening Hashem, asking Hashem for rain, right? Hashem, right? But instead of going to Hashem and davening, saying, please give them rain, they need water. He says, they're driving me nuts. Soon they're going to stone me. Why does he do that? Which seems to imply that Moshe didn't care that they were going to die by death. All he's worried about is that they're going to kill him. They were already thirsty. Why is Moshe? So we have this problem, A, with why is Hashem putting him through this challenge? And B, why is Moshe not davening for them? Why is Moshe complaining even more? Venira, so it appears. Why is Hashem testing? That's the first question we got to answer. Ladricham, to teach them the derech, lasei einehem, to lift up their eyes, lipalel lifnei Hashem, to daven before Hashem. You need something? Hashem can provide it, you think? Of course he can. You want Hashem to provide it for you? You gotta ask him. Don't assume, oh, Hashem knows what you need. Yes, he does know what we need. But Hashem wants us to ask him what we need. Palel, raise your eyes to Hashem and daven to Hashem. This is a very important principle that here they've just gotten out of Egypt. They don't know what's going on. And they got to learn this important lesson. They're like kids. When you raise kids, you got to teach them lessons. Lesson is, you need something, you got to ask for it. You don't ask for it, there's no way I can read your mind. I mean, Hashem can read our minds, but there's no way that Hashem is going to read our minds and say, oh, I know what you need. I know what you need, but I want you to come and ask for it. The Tim said, Shenitchakem Hashem ala davar, and we see already that Hashem has already thought about this. When Hashem gives them the man, the bread that they've asked for, he doesn't give them a year's supply or a month's supply in one shot. He gives them day by day, so that each day they have to go and be relying on Hashem to provide it. Therefore, he holds back the miracle here of the water until they will daven to Hashem, to their Creator, and He will hear their tefillot. And the Torah wants to teach us, instead of davening to Hashem, what did they do? They came to argue with Moshe. When they got so thirsty, they still don't go to Hashem. What do? They go back to Moshe. First they get thirsty, then they complain to Moshe. They did nothing else. They got to the place, they complained to Moshe, there's no water here. They run out of water, they complain to Moshe. Nowhere in that sequence does it even suggest that they did anything to think about, hey, maybe we should daven to Hashem. That doesn't cross their minds. So that's the problem here. They didn't daven on their own behalf. They didn't know if Hashem was still there. Maybe Hashem left them all on their own. They were not confident in the fact that Hashem was still with them. That's why they didn't daven to him. That's why they said, we don't have to daven. Hashem's got to provide for us. So therefore Hashem, so Hashem was trying to get them to understand that through thirst, to get them to understand that you want something, you got to dive into Hashem. Now Moshe understood all this. That's why that's why he doesn't dive into Hashem. He's waiting for the people to figure out what they had to do. Why he didn't tell them what they should do? Good question. But when he saw how troubled everybody was, now they're totally out of water. Perush, what do you mean? What can I do for this people? What can I do so that they won't think that I'm the answer for all their problems? So Moshe certainly understood what was going on. It's not my tefillah. If that was the case, if Moshe thought that his davening was all that was needed, just like he does everywhere else. When the people need him to daven, he's willing to daven for them. If Hashem didn't answer the first time, but he kept davening, like he does in Har Sinai after the Chet HaEgel. He davens until Hashem hears his davening. The ton od lifnei Hashem, and it also complains od ba'at perish im tosif l'tza'aram od ba'at told od davar shetetzen hu uskaluni. These people still won't get it that they're supposed to daven to Hashem. They will lose confidence, lose patience with me, and they'll get rid of me. The lo yesh achar tosif l'tzaram ad shitz'aku l'fanecha b'v'tiyah rabba tetzeh kavanat Hashem l'pol. You can't wait till and keep trying and questioning them and giving them more and more problems because and thinking that they're going to come davening to you. The Zetana Nishmat, and this was understood. So ultimately, Moshe is trying to be the negotiator, if you will, between the people who don't get it yet and Hashem, who wants them to get it, but they're not getting it. How is it possible that Hashem's people who saw all these wonderful things, whether it was Mitzrayim on the Yam and the Midbar, Yitu Badavar, how can they have made this mistake? Lo Yitzhakol Hashem. And why didn't they daven? Why didn't they get it? Is what Ador Chaim wants to understand. They understand that when we daven to Hashem from the heart, Hashem hears our tefillot. That's what they did in Egypt when they were groaning under the whips of the taskmasters. They cried out to Hashem, and Hashem heard their cries. That's why he sent Moshe to bring them out. The Ulai, Chaim says perhaps. As long as Hashem is with us, we don't need to daven. Since Hashem is the one we're following, Hashem, He's the leader. He's telling us where to go. He didn't bring us here to leave us with nothing. He brought us here. He's going to provide what we need. If not, so their thought was, wait a minute. Hashem invited us here. He's the one who told us we got to come here. You don't invite somebody and then say, "Oh, forget it. Bring your own food. We're not bringing anything for you." You invite somebody, you provide for them. So they assumed that they didn't have to specifically dive into Hashem for what they needed because Hashem was the one who brought it there. He knew what they needed. Lo yitztarchu litzfila. The aim that and the fact that it wasn't being provided, so they didn't need to daven because Hashem was the one who told them. The fact that it wasn't being provided, ain Hashem b'kirbam, must be that Hashem has left us alone on our own. And that's why they asked, is Hashem in our midst or not? I'm going to have to stop here because I see my time is up already. But I think the powerful lesson here that the Orach Chaim wants us to understand is that we should not assume that Hashem knows what we need. Yes, Hashem knows what we need. But we can't say, well, we should assume that Hashem is going to automatically provide it just so He can read our minds and know what we need. But we have to ask Hashem when we need something, we have to ask Hashem, because that's why many times Hashem will challenge us and not provide us with things so that we will understand when we do get them that everything we have is a gift from Hashem, no matter whether we think we, quote, earned it, whether we worked hard for it, whatever we might have done, it's a gift from Hashem, everything that we have. And I think that's a very, very powerful lesson. It's also one of the lessons of the Mun, that Hashem is one who provides for all our needs, whether it's parnasa, whether it's house, shelter, food, clothing, etc. All of those things are provided by Hashem. And I think these powerful lessons are what Am Yisrael has to learn before they get to Matan Torah, that we have to put our faith in Hashem. We have to understand that our relationship with Hashem is such that Hashem will provide all our needs, but it's only when we understand that that's where they're coming from. So I think it's a pretty powerful lesson. And that I'm going to say, have a good rest of the week, but I'm going to first open it up for questions, comments, or feedback. If anybody has any questions or comments. Okay. None? Yes? No? Maybe. Okay. Have a good rest of the week, everyone. Thanks for joining. And until next time, we'll see you, Beth Hashem, next week when we'll talk about Parshat Yitro.